You got rid of your globalist leader to replace them with a new globalist leader. Hello, we stream Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday on Rumble. Join us there to hear us telling the truth on subjects like this one. What's the point in having elections and having democracies if you always vote for a bleeding globalist anyway? You get rid of Trudeau, who if he was Fidel Castro's son, that'll be the most interesting thing about him, only to replace him with Mark Carney, Epstein friend and globalist. In fact, I don't know if there's any evidence that he's Epstein friends, but certainly he's been photographed hanging around with Ghislaine Maxwell, and that ain't a good look, baby. Let's have a look at how figure of the left, our very own George Galloway, assesses Mark Carney. He says, democracy is the former governor of the Bank of England with no seat in Parliament. I'm not going to do the accent, it's annoying for people. Being designated as the new Prime Minister of Canada without a single Canadian casting a vote for him, while the runaway leader of the Romanian presidential campaign is banned from standing. So is this the democracy that wars are being fought for? Is this the democracy that your tax dollars and pounds are being spent for? Whether it's propping up Ukraine in a conflict against an insuperable opponent in Russia, or the EU trashing Romanian electoral processes, or Canada electing a globalist? What is this democracy that we're fighting for and dying for? And is globalism, in spite of the rise of American nativism and French nativism, still in the ascendancy?
Well, let's take a look at who is Mark Carney. We're going to start off, okay, first of all, I've been finding more rabbit holes than a guy could possibly trip and fall into. I need a 12-foot stick so I don't fall into these holes. So if anybody out there wants to, give me a hand, I more than appreciate it. This is deep. I'm not even going to go back to the beginning, other than to explain to you that he's lived more of his life outside of Canada than he has inside of Canada. His whole appointment to the Bank of England was completely contrary to what they've done for 300 plus years. He was the first one to do that. And the person to appoint him, not a very good person either. Let's just kind of take a quick dive at his reign at Bank of Canada. A marked man, Carney's BOE departure. Mark Carney's departure from the Bank of England looks to be much less celebratory affair than his initial appointment to the role. When it was announced that he would take over the position in 2012, he was lauded as the outstanding central banker of his generation by then Chancellor of Exchequer George Osborne. Since then, many have come to view him in much less favorability. Carney's fall from grace appears to be yet another consequence of the UK's decision to leave the European Union. While the timeline for the withdrawal process remains elusive, if even guaranteed, the vote in June last year has already claimed its fair share of political casualties. Former Prime Minister David Cameron resigned immediately after the vote, while key figures of his cabinet were soon called from office by his replacement Theresa May. Carney is another victim of the vote, albeit delayed. While not forced out by Brexit itself, the referendum and politics surrounding it changed the feeling towards him and the style of administration he represents. Carney is now confirmed he will be leaving his post as the governor of the Bank of England in June 2019. Now, they go on to talk a little bit about him, but the point of this article is that you're not supposed to be political in any way when you're the governor of either Canada or England or whatever country you're in. He was incredibly political. And there's many of articles that I've gone through where he uses the same terminologies that our Prime Minister Trudeau did. The biggest one being post-national state. He prefers globalism. He was brought in and appointed because at that time, England was going through the idea of removing themselves from the European Union. The person who brought him in was against that. He did not want Brexit. He's a globalist. So he brought in Mark Carney. Mark Carney purposely arranged and manipulated the system, his job, to put at risk England if they did leave the EU. This is how these people work. What I have uncovered, I will not be able to do in this episode. I'm going to need a pile of help. Like I said, I have stumbled upon a rat's nest. Endless labyrinths of rabbit holes. The paper trail is incredibly hard to find, especially since most of it is done through businesses, buyouts, takeovers, manipulation, stocks, trades, all of that jazz. Incredibly hard to try to put in order and understand, especially in timelines. This guy is even more evil than what I thought. And the kicker to it is I found out he's not the independent globalist that I first assumed. Now, I knew he was pushing for the WEF, and I knew that he was one of the generals. And you might have heard me say that lots, where what Trudeau was a captain, this guy is a general. Trudeau was a foot soldier. This guy is a capitaine. There are much bigger corporations and people at play. And what I have found is that this goes into some of the largest corporations on the planet, like Vanguard and especially BlackRock, the WEF, of course, Soros, and governments all around the world, which I've slowly been piecing together, especially like you heard Russell Brand say, on what's going on in Romania, how the people there have figured out earlier than what Canada has, thanks to Starlink, thanks to Elon Musk, and thanks to the fact that their students rose up and brought everybody together, which is what we need here in Canada. We need the young to help go through the digital end of things where our seniors are lacking the knowledge, the ability to do so. And this is where I'm putting out an olive branch looking for some help. You guys need to look into this. This is beyond taking over just governments. This is control on a global scale. The EU is completely compromised. Completely compromised. I'm running across names that I would never have guessed would be part of this, but they play a role in guiding. They're like bumpers. They look like they're doing one thing, but the whole time they're supposed to, in order to get a reflex action for everybody to go another way. Propaganda at the highest level. Manipulation beyond anything a person could possibly imagine. Let's get back to Mr. Osborne. Mr. Osborne. George Osborne, a climate villain? The British government's cancellation of €1 billion to develop carbon capture storage. Does this ring any bells, Canada? This happened in Europe, or in England. Is a broken promise that calls into question UK ministers committed to reduce emissions, writes Chris Davies. Chris Davies is a former Liberal Democrat MEP and was CCS rapporteur on the European Parliament. As we move towards the conclusions of COP21, more people are starting to realize that the political ambitions of one man are likely to have increased the cost of dealing with climate change by billions of euros. Yet the government to which he belongs is still trying to portray itself as a world leader in the achievement of CO2 reductions. In reality, his actions have been set back and perhaps killed the development of a technology that is vital if Europe is to achieve its 2050 objective of reducing emissions by 80 to 95%. He is a man who should be vilified by climate change campaigners, but with few people appreciating the scale of damage he has done, his name is still escaping virtually unspoken in Paris. This man was a bumper. And he used his position and those who ran his strings to get him to help out, push out the coal. So instead of running carbon capture, which we know is probably one of the greatest technologies of the last 20 years, they didn't want to use it. Why? Because the globalists, like Brookfield, were buying up coal, buying up the shipping companies, buying up the holding facilities, buying up all the transports and the contracts. Create an emergency and look like a hero. While they were shutting down England and Canada's coal, shutting down our pipelines, gas and oil exploration, they had already invested in the low costs of these in third world countries. In doing so, not only did they buy cheap, they controlled the market. So then you push politics that now you're creating a crisis, and that crisis needs a new hero. And that hero is going to do amazing things and bring back certain industries and be even more of a climate zealot than his predecessor. So what happened to Mr. Osborne? Well, George Osborne is to earn £650,000 at BlackRock for working 4 days a month. He did this pretty much right when Carney was ready to leave. This is all orchestrated. George Osborne will earn £650,000 a year for working 4 days a month at BlackRock, more than 10 times what he was paid as an MP, once expected to share awards from the world's largest fund manager are included. The detail of Mr. Osborne's pay at BlackRock, which he agreed to join as an advertiser earlier this year, was disclosed in the Registry of Members' Financial Interests at the House of Commons on Wednesday. The disclosure came on Budget Day, which Mr. Osborne watched from the backbenches. It also revealed that he earned £786,450 euro, I should say, from giving 15 speeches, mostly to financial institutions. The former chancellor earned $15,081 a pound for a speech at Lloyd's Bank, which is part owned by the government, in February 2016, but he gave this to charity in his own local constituency. Looked like a hero. He doesn't need the money. He knows he's going to be getting a lot more. He became a part-time senior advisor at the BlackRock Investment Institute, the U.S. group's research arm, in February. He expects to spend 1 day a week working for the Institute. This man was a bumper. And I'm finding, like I said, people who I would never have thought to have been helping the globalists are some of the greatest helpers. The best elves Santa could ever want. Here is a letter. I'm going to read to you. I'll let you read along. March 11th. Mark Carney is not the leader that Canada needs, and other letters to the editor. As Canada struggles with rising costs and a looming trade war, some see Mark Carney as the country's next great leader, and this the media will push now. This is their narrative, that he is going to be the savior of all the damages, and especially Trump. This is why they are using Trump as a card. They are trying to coax Canadians into removing ourselves from our best friend and ally and the person we share our continent with, and they are going to make us join the EU, which then signs us all to the agreements that none of us voted for. And the reason, England left the European Union. A former Bank of Canada and Bank of England governor, a Trudeau advisor, and a finance executive, he's positioned as a steady hand, but his record tells a different story, one of elitism, dishonesty, and failed policies. Carney boasts about steering Canada through the 2008 financial crisis, but his role was minor at best. He's seen simply lowered interest rates, while Canada's resilience was due to a strong banking system and former Prime Minister Stephen Harper's fiscal management, which Harper has gone on the record saying he did nothing and quit trying to take credit for Flaherty, a dead man who can't defend himself, and was probably one of Canada's greatest finance ministers. Now, some people may say, oh no, that was Paul Martin. Have I got to show you something about Paul Martin? And I'm probably going to do an episode on him in the future as well, and how he ripped Canada off and what he did to the shipping industry to take control of it. But let's just move on with Carney. Carney's reliance on low rates and money printing later fueled inflation, mistakes he repeated in the UK but refuses to acknowledge. As Trudeau's top economic advisor, he's overseen record deficits and declining affordability. He falsely claimed most U.S. semiconductor imports are from Canada, misled the public about his role moving Brookfield Asset Management's headquarters to the U.S., and flip-flopped on pipelines, depending on his audience and where he was talking. Beyond his record, Carney's elitism is clear. In the Liberal leadership debate, he couldn't answer a question about the average cost of groceries. He pushes extremist environmental policies, banning gas-powered cars, increasing home heating and air conditioning costs, and imposing tariffs on countries failing his climate standards. And what was he saying today or yesterday? Well, in order to trade with the European Union, you're going to have a carbon price. See where this is going. Socialism turned fascism. Carney's record shows he cannot be trusted to prioritize the Canadian economy, tell the truth, or understand the needs of average Canadians. Canada needs a leader, not another out-of-touch elitist. This goes on. There are a pile of letters in here. I always post all of my homework in the description below. I would like that anybody out there that would like to help out to follow these links and jump in a rabbit hole or two and help out, because, like I said, by the end of this, I'm going to need parts 3, 7, 12, 28, 100, 600, and more. This is enormous. Enormous. This is our growth-based GDP per capita in the last 10 years. Yes, that is Canada, 0.5%. Trudeau decimated. No. Let me correct myself. The Liberal Party, with the help of the NDP and Greens, have decimated our economy. And even this number is propped up because they cheat in how they do their numbers, which is why we need an election. And we have many, conservative members who are wanting this exposed. We lie. Well, not us. They lie. The Liberal Party lies, which everybody knows. But for some reason, they're doing good in the polls because they put lipstick on a pig and threw a completely different sow in front of us. I'm sorry. These people are evil. Now, The administration down in the States did an evaluation. And what they found through doing these evaluations is a whole bunch of, we'll call it cartel type appointees, bribery, corruption. And we're talking what I just explained at the beginning, where they infiltrate governments to set policies. These policies decimate the industries and resources within the country, put a stranglehold on them. They make billions of dollars off of their green investments that are then given grants by said government, which is your tax dollars, people, and then make even more money off of third world countries shipping all that bad, dirty energy to other nations. The kicker to all of this is what nations are actually doing well because of it, and are some of the greatest funders that are helping this fascism take over the rest of the world. That would be China. I'm liking Trump more and more as I dig deeper. I've always kind of liked his policies. I thought he was a bit of a wingnut, but I loved his policies. But I'm really starting to understand where this guy is going, why he's doing what he's doing. He's not only light years ahead of Canada, he knows he knows what's going on, and what I just fell into once again, even deeper than I was before. Trump's EPA to reevaluate CO2 endangerment finding, while Mark Carney plans to double down on net zero, says Friends of Science. I follow these Friends of Science. They're actually not bad. They actually have real scientists, not like Al Gore. For some reason, it seems that all of these climate zealot religious nutcases, they never have an actual scientist get up and talk about it because there's no proof. There's no evidence. It's all bullcrap. Which I already knew that's old school. Again, I follow history. I know that Egypt had was a rainforest, had rivers, the largest freshwater lake on the planet, not 5,000 to 8,000 years ago. I also know that 10,000 to 15,000 years ago, Canada was under almost 2 miles of ice. Climate change happens every day, and I also know that all the CO2 that we dig up and burn, it's not like it's been there forever. It was once above surface. It's part of our environment, literally part of our environment. And by the way, it is like the number one plant food. I grow a lot. I have a greenhouse. And yes, I inject CO2 in it at certain seasons. The Trump administration will reevaluate the so-called endangered findings fundamental to the claim that carbon dioxide is harmful and must be taxed or reduced to net zero, says Friends of Science. Canada, under Mark Carney, is going to the opposite direction as outlined in the Friends of Science new report. What do we do now? On March 12, 2025, the United States Environmental Protection Agency issued a press release announcing a reevaluation of the endangerment finding of 2009 that carbon dioxide constitutes a threat to human health and Earth's climate. This move may undermine the entire climate narrative, says Friends of Science Society. Carbon taxes and carbon trading markets are premised on the view that carbon dioxide is harmful and emissions must be reduced to zero to allegedly save the planet from climate change. Again, I will have this posted in the description below. Feel free to read it. And trust me, you're going to like Friends of Science. They're really good because they're real scientists. Now, this is a document everybody's been saying, well, show me your proof, show me your proof. And I've been waiting. I've had the document. It's a lot to go over. The gist of what this document is climate control. Exposing the decarbonization collusion in environmental, social, and government. ESG. Investing. Who are the media trying to make the Prime Minister of Canada? The king of ESG himself. That's right, the evil Mr. Carney. This is an incredibly long document. This is only one part of many that I have found. Here's what I can tell you that's in it. I've already kind of explained a little bit at the beginning, but I'm just going to give you a quick overview. You create fear, carbon dioxide. You use civilized worlds where it's easy to manipulate through their own systems of democracy. You overturn and overtake government. You try to work from the shadows as much as possible. If it doesn't work, you infiltrate the government, like Klaus Schwab has done to the Liberal Party, where over half of them have been penetrated. They pass legislation. The media helps pass the narrative. It gets embedded into your school system. Outside sources of so-called NGOs, like the Tides Foundation, evil bastards those guys are, as amongst others, to flood and support using your own tax dollars, siphoned through and funneled through NGOs into these supposedly nonprofit organizations with the help of people like George Soros, to pass all of this brainwashing on to the generations. They also do it through advertising. They do it through companies that have been bought out, like Brookfield owns thousands of little companies, who are trying to transition to net zero, when in actuality, they're bumpers. They're bought and made to fail, to struggle. While on the other side of the investment scheme, they are making trillions of dollars because they're driving the price up on commodities. Thus why Trump keeps saying, I'm going to get oil prices down. Drill, baby, drill. They're going to put all of these eco-zealots out of business. And I'm helping. And I have been already, but now I'm really going to start by doing a lot more shows on a lot of the stuff that I'm finding through a lot of these documents. There are piles of links in this paperwork. I would suggest you read this. It is mind-blowing. Back to the global agenda. So we put a cap on our emissions. We throw all of our pipelines and resource sector development off the table, driving prices of energy sky high, depleting the value of the dollar, costing more to the products that that country can make and produce, creating a larger trade deficit and a need for trade because the people can't afford to buy from their local because it costs them too much to grow and produce. And you don't want to have to pick between eat and heat. So you buy what's cheap from China or other third world countries, where the corporations have already been infiltrated and taken over by conglomerates like BlackRock, Vanguard, Brookfield, and the list goes on and on. Quebec used to invest in, believe it or not, pipelines. They started getting away from it a little bit more and more, especially with the separatist movement and the whole push for hate the West. Hate the West. This is why I never did learn French. I started to, but after going through the province and seeing that, I was a little embarrassed and decided I'm not going to learn that. It was I'm sorry, but the politics there are very racist. They're race-based. They are their own demise. They're going to lose their language because of it. I used to be able to go around all over Canada and there were people speaking French. Not anymore. French immersion is a thing of the past because people have a bad taste in their mouth whenever you mention Quebec or French. And I don't blame them. I don't necessarily blame the people. I say this often. It's the propaganda. If that's all you hear, it's what you believe. We have to break the bubble. And I'm hoping by exposing like this, Quebec, maybe they'll wake up and see they're being lied and deceived too. Pension plan. Ontario Pension Fund invests in Abu Dhabi pipeline mega project, puts teachers' retirement savings at risk. This was in 2020. This was the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, which a lot of teachers probably aren't aware of. Now, the kicker is the government takes it out of the dwindling monies they're getting from Western crude because they've capped it and wiped all of the projects off. So now it's not such a great investment. So instead, they join up with Brookfield with a little help from the federal government and invest in blood oil. Yes, teachers, this is where your pensions are making money. Your neighbors aren't getting ahead. In fact, you're helping kick them in the teeth. This is your unions. This is your government. This is what the Liberal NDP, with the support of the Green, want to do. Blood oil. Congratulations. Yay! Woo-hoo-hoo! You helped kill your own country. Probably didn't even know you were invested in blood oil. Moving on. How Interpipeline could emerge as a key asset in Brookfield's budding oil and gas empire. Now, do you remember the only pipeline, the only one that actually stayed and got a whole pile of government money, all of our taxes, to make sure that it got built? Right, the Trans Mountain Pipeline. How Interpipeline could emerge as a key asset in Brookfield's budding oil and gas empire. Do you see where this is going? The prices fall. Pipelines are wiped aside so there's no competition. Brookfield walks in, purchases it for cheap with the help of the Liberal government, advised by Mark Carney. And there you go. And now what's the push? What's the media pushing? We need to build more what? Pipelines. Are you getting this? Here's Quebec. Statement on the CDPQ's oil producer divestment and new emissions intensity targets. This was 2021. The Caisse de dépôt, le placement du Québécois, blah, 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 moved to exclude investments in oil producers from its portfolio by the end of 2022. Is a welcome and significant move that improves the CDPQ's position as a climate leader among Canada's major financial institutions. It is amazing that it took until 2021 for a Canadian pension fund to finally recognize that protecting our retirement savings from the worsening climate crisis inevitability requires abandoning market exposure to high-risk fossil fuels. However, it should be acknowledged that if oil is too risky for the climate and Quebecers' pensions, then so are ongoing investments in fossil gas. While gas may be less polluting than coal when burned, it remains a major source of climate pollution across the production supply chain. To achieve climate safety, investment in fossil gas production and infrastructure must also be urgently phased out. They were invested in pipelines, but then they sell off those pipelines. And what pipeline were they talking about? Well, they were talking about a pipeline that's in Brazil. Now do you see how many rabbit holes I'm going through? I urge you to go back. I will put the link in the description in case you have a hard time finding it, on how Carney and Brookfield is burning Brazil. and the corruption that these companies and people are involved in doing so. And if you haven't watched, I'll throw you a hint, like burning 9,000 acres of rainforest, while the same people that are making money off it are in our government screaming and using the media saying, see what's going on? They're burning that huge, beautiful forest. Brookfield burnt it to the ground, jackasses. Brookfield burnt it. And not only did they burn it, they started building dams where they didn't need to be, without the permission or even knowledge of the indigenous people who live there. And then they flooded all of the natural hunting and gathering grounds of those indigenous peoples. Where do you think they end up going? They end up going to the cities. That's right, where it's very easy to manipulate and brainwash and control. Do you remember me talking about this on the other episode? Rural versus city, and how these huge corporations and evil governments use the populations with propaganda and numbers in order to control entire nations. You wonder why all the farmers are always voting conservative? At least 75%, since far back as I can find. Interesting, right? Interesting. So they said they sold that pipeline. They're going to completely decarbonize. Yes, we are going to decarbonize. Sure you are, Quebec. Sure you are. Case among backers of Brookfield's Emerging Markets Clean Energy Fund. Well, unbelievable. GIC and Quebec Pension back Brookfield Fund. Yes. What does Brookfield make its money off of, people? Are our EV plants doing well? Northvolt just went tits up in a handbasket. How many billions did we give to them? Bye-bye. In the meantime, China's got 100% tariffs on us because we have a protectionist racket for a government trying to prop up these investments because the shareholders need more time. Trump wasn't supposed to win. They got caught with their pants down. All hell is breaking loose. Good against evil, people. This is good against evil. And we have a lot of Canadians that aren't aware they're helping evil. Brookfield is using pensions of Canadians, misinformation, deceit, and every other thing that comes with it in order to crush our economy, to buy everything low, to take over all of the Canadian companies with their new Canadian companies owned by investment firms and shareholders that are part of the global establishment. Create a crisis, come up with a solution. Problem being, you and I and the rest of Canada are suffering and will continue to suffer because of it. So Brookfield's Clarios plans raising debt for dividend, sources say. Now this is what Michael Barrett was talking about on yesterday's episode. This is what they do. So they tell the investors, you're going to make X amount. And then once you make that amount, we take 20% off the top. That way they guarantee themselves to make more investments. Where do those investments go? Those investments go to buy and take over the decimated democracies that were once civilized, like Canada and the UK. This is the ongoing crisis that nobody's talking about and mainstream is avoiding because they're part of the problem. And I would have to say that most of them probably don't even know because they grew up being brainwashed by the same system they're now part of. Sam Cooper. Brookfield's ties to the Chinese government. Brookfield's deep ties to billions in Chinese land, loans, and green deals, and a real estate tycoon with CCP links raise questions as Carney takes over from Trudeau. There it is. This is something I've been talking about. This is something I know about. I'm fortunate enough that I am linked to Sam Cooper through, not like I know him, I follow him, and I ended up becoming part of his email list. So I get a lot of emails from him, and I appreciate all of them because as far as I'm concerned, he's the greatest journalist in Canada and soon to be one of the greatest in Canadian history. These ties and some of the loops that have taken me all the way to the Panama Papers. Yeah. This is all Brookfield in the Panama Papers. And through digging through these, it is amazing what I found. Now, the trail leads to this guy, Henrique de Campos Meriels, who was the bank governor of Brazil after a coup, which removed the president and put a new government in. And it just so happened when all of that happened, Brookfield started adjusting a bunch of assets and land, buyouts, and building dams. It's an amazing thing. Amazing thing. Now he's the Minister of Finance. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? He's in the Panama Papers. And once in there, of course, we already know about the WEF. But I found a whole bunch of links linking Henry Meriels to a bunch of other people we know, including Mark Carney. Now, I haven't got all of the ties together, but these are just a few. Of the other people who have not actually shown to be not involved. They haven't proven their innocence, but there is no real proof of their guilt. And it keeps going. His billions that he laundered. We are living in an illusion. And we really, really need to start exposing these people for what they are. They are crooks, they are liars, they are deceivers. And the first way to do it is to stop the propaganda machine in its tracks. I've got a lot of digging to do. If anybody out there can help, we can join up very easily and share information. I'm an open book. I want all of this out there. And unlike other media outlets and independents, I don't mind giving credit where credit is due. This has to be brought to people's attention. I need you to like, share, and subscribe. And if you are, punch that notification bell. It not only helps grow my channel, but you'll be notified every time I put out another episode. I hope you all enjoyed today's. I'm going to be a few weeks on this, building another episode. Until my next episode tomorrow, I hope to see you. You've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal, and I am alias Tagai.